it's tapers towards the bottom. So if you're drawing the leg and it ends up looking like this, you're off on the anatomy for it. You want to learn the real shape of the leg, which tends to curve in towards the knee. Another little tip on making sure you're drawing it correctly or it starts to look right. And the same thing for the knee. For the knee, it starts off right about the same width as the base of the leg, and then tapers off towards the bottom. Just draw it through. We started out with something so loose as this, just a gesture, a stick figure to give yourself an idea, and then it turned into a more substantial figure. Just like a building, it started out with a couple of beams, we laid on some bricks, and eventually worked on the exterior, and now we have a structure. Welcome to Art Lounge. So, what's Art Lounge? It's a space for artists, ones aspiring, or those who enjoy it, to come together and share ideas, thoughts, expression, and creation. So whether you're an illustrator, a writer, a musician, sculptor, comedian, dancer, architect, or someone who enjoys art in general, this space is for you. I'll be streaming daily with a mix of content, and in the near future, I'll be announcing different opportunities for you to participate in, so stick around. Hello guys, welcome back to the Drawing Comics stream, where I will be drawing Conan the Barbarian. As you can see, this is just some work from the previous stream if you missed it, and I'm just going to show you guys what we'll be drawing. And this is the page, and this is that beautiful panel. It's amazing work from John Buscema. If you guys haven't checked out his work, I highly recommend it if you really enjoy comics, especially like early comics like this, to check out his work. It's a huge library of work coming from him. He was one of the few to start out in Marvel Comics, and he drew pretty much every single Marvel character from the beginning. So I highly encourage you to check him out, like Fantastic Four, Thor, Silver Surfer, Black Panther, like all of those characters. He's done an issue, at least one issue on any of them. If you missed it in the first stream, I actually did a little short talking about John Buscema's life, like how he started his journey out into becoming an illustrator at Marvel, and just like a brief little overview of his career, how much he's drawn, what kind of stuff he's drawn. It's a cool little 5-minute short. I also uploaded it on YouTube, so if you don't want to really start the whole stream, or you can't stick around for the hour, you could just go to the YouTube channel and check it out there. It's about 4 or 5 minutes. Alright, and with that said, let's begin. Now it's just a matter of deciding, like, which panel do I want to do? And I'm kind of thinking this one right here. I really like the face on these two. It's pretty cool. Also enjoy drawing hands, so that's fun. Might be drawing that, and then hopefully get into this panel right here, because it's a pretty cool perspective. I mean, if you really look at it, and that's one of the great things, as I mentioned previously, about drawing from comics, is you get to see or study really all the different ways that they go from panel to panel. So aside from the story, which sometimes people overlook the art, they kind of just glance it over and then read the art, read the text, and then move on to the next panel and the text. But to really look at it and what's captivating about it, I think one of the cool things is the camera angle, and they're able to draw this lens kind of from different perspectives. And this one is kind of coming from like the top of the stairs or some sort of hole in the wall kind of camera angle, looking down at these characters as if they were there, kind of like if you were like a fly and you were on the wall and you were looking down at these people doing their thing. It's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, just studying all other things, like how he fills in empty space, and simple lines like this can give it character, like it's a floor and it's kind of dirty. You look at it, I mean, when you briefly look at it, that's what you kind of are supposed to see. But then if you really study it, it's just some squiggle lines that he was able to do. But he's so masterful, and his hand is so versatile when it comes to drawing shapes and different gestures and lines. It just works. It's this magical thing that happens. Your eye looks at it and you're like, oh, it's floor and it's kind of dirty, but it's just some squiggles, it's just some lines and stuff. I really like that. That's very cool. It's masterful work when you know where to place and how to place these very simple lines to create an effect. I think he's great at that, and I'll point out other ways as well. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna stick with these two panels for now. So let's start like we usually do with a frame. And I'm pretty sure we could try and fit this in. Like, I really like filling up the page as much as possible. Something cool and aesthetically pleasing. I've showed you guys before, but just to show it again, it just looks nice. And when the entire page is just filled up with the drawings, I really enjoy that, and I highly encourage you guys to do that. And I did that with like other panels as well. It's a pleasant result, and it's not as wasteful. You're not wasting paper. You know, for instance, if you try to draw this hand and it didn't come out right, to just move on to another page. I don't, it's not good. Just good to fill up as much as possible, and it also kind of breaks that fear of overlapping images and how to draw images on top of each other and make them work with each other. Like, you see how this hand is kind of overlapping, or the fingers are overlapping this hand over here, and drawing like he's holding the razor, but having like the pinky kind of like overlap the razor in a way, and being able to draw like that. I think that's another big fear that a lot of beginners have. Like, they don't want to disturb the other object near it. And granted, sometimes it's better not to, but for the sake of practice, for the sake of like eliminating all these fears that end up being shortcomings in a long run, I think it's good to do that. Fill up the page and see how you can overlap objects and overlap parts of whatever it is that you're drawing, one on top of another. So we're gonna do a frame to start with, and this one's pretty easy because we've already established the size of this frame, and as you can see in the reference, they're all pretty much the same size. So that's measurement not having to do. And this is gonna be kind of tight, but we're gonna make it work. And in the original one, it is kind of like narrow as well. Alright, so now that we got the frame down, and also another trick is, well, like I was mentioning before, like getting a clear ruler really helps. But the way you could ensure that you're making a line straight down and that it's not angled in any direction is lining up the top of the ruler to the page. So if that's lined up and it's perfect, it's not angular, like you see how there's like a little bit of space here, then you know it's at an angle. But if it's perfectly in line with the page, then you could make sure that you have a straight line go across. And the same thing here. And this is kind of like the beauty of having this small ruler as well, is because you really could see the end of it and make sure that it's lined up with the page. I mean, granted, this is going towards the opposite direction, but the spirals kind of help level it off. And then you could just make that straight line going across. And you push it up against the spirals to do it. Or if you're doing it the opposite direction, if you don't mind a little bit of a elevation, you could line it up at the end and see that it's perfectly lined up, and then boom, you got yourself a straight line going across. So that's a little tip on how to do it. And other ways as well, going the opposite direction, you can, well, once you make these two, it's easier to connect. But let's say if you do this line right here, again, you could refer to spatial relationship between objects or features. So for instance, is this line parallel perfectly to this, and this line, and this line? Just little tools, ways to make sure that you're getting the accuracy you're aiming for. With that said, let's start sketching. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're going to, just making sure this pencil isn't running out of lead. We're going to sketch again. We're gonna start off with a very light drawing, just to make sure that by the time you get to the bottom, by the time you finish the rest of it, it all fits within this frame and that it's all proportionate. So like the original, we're going to leave space for the text. We're going to make sure that it's enough. And it's also another way of, if you're copying, if you're referencing this, trying to like learn from it, you can create these boxes as a way of filling up space and working from them to establish the next part of the drawing. So once we've established that, we're going to ask, okay, how far away is the box from the helmet of this guy in the reference? It's not too much, right? It's like there's a bit of a gap there, but it's not a big, huge gap. And then another question is, how far away is the frame from his helmet? And that's also not too wide of a gap. So just technique, this, see how useful it is to have this tool and on your tool belt. You can use it for multiple things. When you're working with panels, when you're working on anatomy, when you're working on references, whatever it is, you can use that tool to help make sure that you get proportions right, get the anatomy and the positioning of whatever it is that you're drawing right. Just multiple benefits to it. It's great. Okay, so not getting into too much detail, we're going to sketch this out, sketch out the other guy's head. Again, space recognition, how far up is the helmet from this guy's helmet? And it's a little bit below because it's at a distance. They're not too far away from each other, in which case, and he's not like on top of any stairs, so there would be no reason for it to be higher unless he's taller. So it's a little bit he's a little bit shorter, or he's about the same size maybe, or even if he is taller, the further distance he goes behind him, the shorter he's going to get in perspective, especially at this angle. Well, that's more about perspective than it is about this, and we'll get to that. Okay, the next one is this hooded man. And we can refer back to the spatial recognition again. How far away is the hood from this guy's face? And they're basically touching, which sometimes isn't that great, but I am going to honor the original and stick to it. So for some of the things that I've learned is it's best not to have objects like barely touching each other. It's better to either overlap them to give this more of like a dynamic vibe in the composition and the layout of the panel, than to just have these like tip touching objects next to each other. It's not as interesting and dynamic as it is with the latter, having them overlap each other. As you guys saw in the examples of like that other page with the hands kind of overlapping each other, it just kind of looks more fun that way. But Jean Buscema's work is absolutely amazing, so it doesn't even get in the way. Okay, I'm going into too much detail. Let's switch that off and give ourselves this structure. Lay down the beams, or bring up the beams, whichever. How far away is the hand from the frame? It's not touching it. And it's definitely at a distance. It's kind of a packed panel. And I noticed that I'm giving the hood a little bit too much presence in the panel, and there isn't that much of it in the original. Now this is also a different challenge, because if you were to do it professionally, there is comic book paper that's specifically for this, and it's a lot bigger than this. It's like, I want to say it's like 13 by 17, whereas this is like, I don't know, 6 by 8 or something. So you get to really, the space is a lot. There's a lot more space to work with. Come across another dilemma here. His belt isn't huge. It's not wide. So what we're gonna do is follow the guidelines of the frame. Like, look at this frame right here. Look how much space there is. That negative space that we were talking about before. It's a tiny little spot. And see how much easier it is to draw that than to like picture the torso. But this is the benefit of sketching things, because if you don't like what you're seeing, you could shift it over a little bit as you're defining the lines more. It's not to your liking, so you could just either erase it, which I'm trying not to do as much, or just work your way with new lines towards the direction you want it to go. If there are John Buscema fans on the stream, post which comic book you really like. What's your favorite? Do you have like a favorite panel as far as the art goes? Like, is there a favorite issue that you have and you want to share with chat, and also for me to check out? Do have pretty much most of his Conan the Barbarian collection, but not so much the other ones. To be honest, I'm not a big Thor fan. He did a lot of work for Thor as well, but I'm not really into that character. Maybe I just haven't given it enough of a chance. But I do like Fantastic Four. That's a pretty fun team. So I'll have to get my hands on a couple of issues on Fantastic Four. And check out his art there. So this is the part where I start to define a little bit more. The lines that I want to go with. But I am running into a couple of like shifting problems. And I think it just has to do with size difference when it comes to the paper. I think the other big challenge is, at least for me sometimes, is not to draw it exactly as I see it, because it is smaller in the reference, whereas I'm trying to draw it here, which is a little bit bigger. So I'm trying to draw the lines exactly the same size as they are here, whereas they should be longer here. And it's a challenge between that. And as I was mentioning, all those tools in your tool belt can help make sure it's more accurate. Like just that space relationship between objects and comparing them to each other as a way of moving forward, as opposed to just really only focusing on the reference and trying to draw exactly as a reference. Like just using both, using the tool of spatial recognition on your own work to make sure that the lines are as accurate according to the frame size, how they line themselves up in the frame. The angles of lines is also tricky. You know, you might think that, let's say for this one, it doesn't curve as much, it's a little further down, but in fact, it does curve a lot. So the lines of the angles can really make a difference. And can shift the entire image in a direction you don't want it to go. It's also really masterful at using shadows to portray something. So for instance, like for the brow and the eye, he was able to just make this cool shape that that says that like this is the brow line, and this is where it curves on the nose, and so on. Just to show you guys, I'll highlight it. You can see how important it is to actually give yourself that framework. Draw those boundaries. Otherwise, I would have probably been doing a lot more erasing. And shifting things over and so on. And then once that's in place, that's when the fun begins. That's when the icing on the cake starts. Where you're just adding little details, making it look nice. Shaping out the lines more. For instance, on this guy's arm. Didn't really do much work on the hand and the fingers. Let's do it now. In the future, I'll be showing you guys other comics and favorite panels and kind of work that artists have done. And probably not just keep it to comics. I'll be showing you guys paintings as well that I really like, and how the artist is able to convey his message through them, or the kind of message that I got from them, which is always fun. And that's something I was talking about in the previous streams as well. It's not getting bogged down by just other people's interpretations, also using your creativity to come up with your own. And that's always fun. That's part of the art as well. It's like you look at an image and you could come up with a story for it yourself. Get the creativity going. About the fingers is that they're very similar to the idea of the leg as well when you're drawing it. Knowing where to taper them off. You don't want to have popsicle sticks. For fingers, you want to give them like a more slender look, and that's knowing when to taper them off. He's holding some sort of jewel. I think for me sometimes is, I guess, as an illustrator, you get more into the actual work than what's going on. At least for me, I get really into the drawings, and I spend more time looking at that than actually reading the stories and what's going on. And when it comes to comics or reading them, I really take my time. And I think that's just in general when it comes to like visual art. I really do take my time with it. If I go to a museum and I look at art, I don't browse, like I don't just go through it like, you know, Instagram photos of just like flicking through it quickly. I take my time and I really study it. I look at it and I stand there and really take it in. I think that's what it's really about. It's not so much just going in and being like, I went to a museum. It's just really studying the work. And I think, yeah, again, because I really like to come up with my own interpretations or coming up with like stories or whatnot, I take a long time with each one. With comics, it's different. I mean, it's a little bit more straightforward depending on what kind of comics you're reading. But still, just having to sit there and study them and look at like the camera angles, and sometimes there is a story behind the panel, or more meaning rather behind the panel than is actually visible to the naked eye. And that's also fun depending on the artist, depending on the writer. You come across some really cool panels, which I will be showing you guys later as well. I think that Watchmen, the Watchmen comic, has a lot of that. Has a lot of these like messages within panels. Underlying meaning. And as I've mentioned before, one of my favorite artists, Eduardo Rissohi and Brian Azzarello, they're great together, and they've created some awesome panels. Can't praise him enough. He's one of the most the modern artists that I really like right now. Guys, haven't checked it out, check out 100 Bullets. He's also working currently on Moonshine, which is another really cool comic book. Beautiful work, beautiful coloring as well. The coloring is awesome. If you guys are just tuning in, you're not part of the live stream, comment about what your favorite modern comic book is now. Whose work do you enjoy the most currently? wanted to get to the other panel before I cut the stream, but it doesn't look like that's gonna happen. And we're gonna have to save this panel, the next panel, for the next stream, because unfortunately I do have to cut it or shorten this stream. Started a bit late on this one because I got really into the previous stream. If you guys missed it, it's a drawing basic stream. And I got really into drawing there. I went overtime. So it kind of stole time away from here, and that's why it kind of took a bit longer to start streaming this session. Crosshair we were talking about. Again, like, look at this, the original, the reference, like, there's not much detail in his eyes, right? It's just like, it's complete darkness. You don't see his pupil, but just tiny little details, like the right line can change it from looking like nothing to looking like an eye. Like, that's so cool. A little gesture line at the top of the brow to give him a little bit more of a furrowed look. Look at the mug on this guy. This grumpy looking dude. Probably gonna finish this face and then end the stream, as much as I don't want to. I am excited for the next stream, which is gonna be the project stream, and I'm gonna be working on a project that I've been wanting to complete for a while now. So it's gonna be cool to get a chance to do more of that. And as promised, I haven't worked on it since the last stream on Friday, so I'm really looking forward to getting back into it. was a little too thick. So this would be different if the pages were bigger, but I don't know why I just have this like desire to challenge myself by drawing in small on small pages. But I think really mainly it's just wanting to finish this entire sketchbook with all the pages filled all over the page. I want to collect myself more sketchbooks with that sort of goal in place. Just sketchbook after sketchbook with every single page filled from head to toe. Alright guys, this is it for the stream, the Drawing Comics stream. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. Looking forward to it. So make sure you hit the subscribe button to get a notification when I'm going to go live, when I'm starting. Join the social media,